Good day, everyone. I am John Lloyd Rufila Analos, and today we are going to talk about Western ethics. Western ethics, on the other hand, has more of an emphasis on self and what is rationally or logically true. Furthermore, Western ethics places more emphasis on law and justice, whereas Eastern ethics states that one must do what is right and expected, and the universe will take care of the rest. Ethical teaching of Socrates. He believes that an examined life is not worth living. One must seek knowledge and wisdom before private interests. Ethical teaching of Plato. Plato maintains a virtue-based eudaimonistic conception of ethics. Happiness or well-being is the highest aim of moral thought and conduct, and the virtues are the requisite skills and dispositions needed to attain it. Plato rejected the materialism common to ancient philosophy in favor of metaphysics. He believed in the existence of an immaterial world of perfect objects and forms. Aristotelian concept of the mean can be conveniently grouped as follows: the mean from the standpoint of conduct, intercourse between words and actions, and passions. The mean from the standpoint of conduct involves the following virtues: concerning feelings of fear and confidence. A fearful man exceeds in fearfulness, and the man who exceeds in confidence is rash. Concerning pleasure and pain, temperance is the mean. Aristotle's self-indulgence and instability with regard to deficiency in pleasure. Concerning the giving and taking of money, the mean is like liberality. Concerning honor and dishonor, the mean is proper pride. Concerning anger, the mean is good temper. Concerning friendship, the mean is friendliness, while the exaggeration is being obsequious or a flatterer, and the deficiency is quarrelsome. Finally, from the standpoint of passions, the mean includes only one virtue. The mean of envy and spite is righteous indignation. Plato said it best: the man who is characterized by righteous indignation is pained at undeserved good fortune. The envious man, going beyond him, is pained at all good fortune, and the spiteful man falls short of being pained that he even rejoices. Indeed, Jesus' ethics demonstrates a preference for the poor, the abandoned, the disadvantaged, the unprivileged, the persecuted, the exploited, and the oppressed. Jesus emphasized in the ethical ideal entices these people to bear their lot and develop a sense of hope for their glorious future. The mean from the standpoint of intercourse between words and actions includes the following virtues. Concerning the truth, the mean is truthfulness, while the exaggeration is boastness, and the deficiency is modesty. Concerning the pleasantness in giving of amusement, the mean is ready-willedness, while the exaggeration is buffoonery, and the deficiency is boorishness. Jesus Christ's ethical teaching. Our Lord Jesus' moral paradigm is similar to that of Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle, in that it is a personal call to self-realization. Its moral teaching makes no distinction between social classes. In other words, Jesus' ethics makes no distinction between slave and freeman, rich and poor, or the strong and the weak. According to Jesus, the core of ethics is found in man's heart, not in a man's observance of the law or fidelity to traditional norms. Jesus' ethics seeks no hypocrisy because it speaks directly to one's heart and mind. He teaches sincerity and honesty. He dislikes people who want to be moral because they want to be validated or approved by the general public or mainstream society for being good. Jesus' ethics teaches faith in the Father. Jesus' moral teaching demands peace and reconciliation. He compares his ethical system to Jewish law to emphasize his ethical demand. The moral teaching of Jesus demands suffering and sacrifice. This is, of course, connected to the first heading we cited. Moral theory and applied ethic grounded on Christian revelation and drawing heavily on ancient philosophical inquiry, which acknowledges that man's pursuit of happiness through participation in God is thwarted by sin and can be realized only with the assistance of an appropriate mediator. Augustine explains how Christ communicates his truth and grace to both the inner and outer man by using images of Christ as a teacher and a physician. Augustine contends that in order to become righteous, wise, and holy in eternity like God, man must seek to grow in virtue, knowledge, and love now by submitting his disordered intellect. Augustine contends that in order to become righteous, wise, and holy in eternity like God, man must seek to grow in virtue, knowledge, and love now by submitting his disordered intellect and will to God's perfect charity. Ethical principles, according to Aquinas, are the results of natural moral knowledge. Everyone has an innate understanding of natural law, known as synderesis. This natural law manifests only in reason and not in inclinations. In direct contrast to the pride, envy, and division, he saw a defining man's fall and subsequent pursuit of worldly lust. Augustine advances a morality rooted in the Trinity's humility, charity, and unity. Science is a type of operational practical intelligence that reminds people of their principles when they face real-world decisions. Conscience is a better guide to doing the right thing than external social norms, which most often reflect dominant social power relations. Four main virtues according to Aquinas. Prudentia, the act of bringing moral reasoning into all decisions and putting it before irrational desires and ego promotion. Aquinas does not have a theory of human rights, but his idea of justice in which everyone has a right to what they are just given comes very close to developing such an idea. Kant replies that we can know the natural, observable world, but we cannot have answers to many of the deepest questions of metaphysics. Common and general criticism are that because it is concentrates on principles or rules, Kantian ethics is doomed to be either empty and formalistic or rigidly uniform in its prescriptions. Utilitarianism also struggles to account for values like justice and individual rights. This would arguably result in the greatest good for the greatest number of people. Ethical teaching of Jeremy Bentham. Jeremy Bentham was the father of utilitarianism. He argued that if the consequences of an action are positive, the act is moral. If the consequences are negative, the act is immoral. Ethical teaching of John Stuart Mill. John Stuart Mill's ethical theory is best articulated in his classic text, Utilitarianism. Its goal is to justify the utilitarian principle as the moral foundation. Theory is known as hedonic utilitarianism because of his emphasis on pleasure. Bentham believes that it is not only one's own happiness or pleasure that is important. As a result, Mill focuses on the consequences of actions rather than on rights or ethical sentiments. Mill defines utilitarianism as the belief that a specific theory of life is the foundation of morals. Existential ethics. The English term existentialism was originally a translation of the German word Existenzphilosophie. Existentialism holds that human consciousness is fundamentally free with the ability to choose at all times. All philosophical, ethical systems and existentialism's moral theory are relevant to disaster. Disasters always have heroes who we admire for their bravery, especially on popular culture and entertainment.
Dialectical ethics. Dialectics is a philosophical argumentation method that involves some sort of contradictory process between opposing sides. Plato presented his philosophical argument as a back and forth dialogue or debate, generally between the character of Socrates on one side and some person or group of people to whom Socrates was talking on the other. In what is perhaps the most classic version of dialectics, Socrates' interlocutors propose definitions of philosophical concepts or express views that Socrates challenges or opposes during the dialogues. Analytical ethics. Historically, moral philosophy has been divided into normative ethics and meta-ethics. Normative ethics is concerned with moral judgments and how we should act. The field of meta-ethics, which includes analytic ethics, seeks to comprehend such judgments. Analytical ethics thus encompasses not only the meaning of moral terms, but also epistemology, metaphysics, and action theory. Evolutionistic ethics. Evolutionary ethics attempts to bridge the gap between philosophy and the natural sciences by arguing that natural selection has endowed humans with a moral sense or a proclivity to do good. Edward O. Wilson, the father of sociobiology, who believes that scientists and humanists should consider together the possibility that the time has come for ethics to be reconsidered, to be biologicalized and temporarily removed from the hands of philosophers. Sociability, altruism, cooperation, mutual aid, and so on can all be explained by the biological roots of human social behavior. Moral behavior aided the long-term survival of the morally inclined human species. One of the main issues with evolutionary ethics is that it is not a single field with a single quest. Institution ethics, right and wrong, are determined by the circumstances. The meaning of good, according to George Edward Moore. He and Russell led the British philosophical turn away from idealism, becoming known for advocating common sense concepts and contributing to ethics, epistemology, and metaphysics. He was described as having a extraordinary personality and moral character. On the traditional understanding of good, in traditional ethics, especially scholastic ethics, good is understood as the object of human desire and craving, or that which satisfies that which craves for it. Good was definable in such a way as to imply that it was necessarily pleasure or the desirable. In other words, it was claimed that this definition were necessary synthetic proposition. The preface to Moore's Principia. Moore's consequentialism in the preface to Principia Ethica. Moore distinguishes between two different kinds of ethical claims about what things are good and claims about what actions we ought to perform. Moore's argument that goodness is simple and indefinable Morse view, what is the good? Then, if we mean by it that quality which we assert to belong to a thing, which we say that the thing is good, is incapable of any definition. What we want to understand is first what he means by this, and second why he thinks this. Simple and complex properties. Begin with the distinction between simple and complex properties. Most plausible idea is that some properties are really just complexes of other, more basic properties. Based on the presentation, we can conclude that Moore's failure to provide a specific definition of good becomes a weakness in the entire system based on his philosophical thought. It is undeniable that ethical principles are essential components of any philosophical theory's adequacy. This means that no one can ever tell another person that his or her understanding of what is morally good or bad is distorted by wrongness. K. Thomas Nagel concept of solipsism, dissociation, and the impersonal standpoint of morality. According to Nagel, is dependent on how the system of timeless reason is interpreted. Interpretation of both objective and timeless reason are dependent on a person's distinct conception of himself. Another that should correspond to the transmission of reason's influence over time. This could imply that if the interpretation according to the first argument, only practical principles formulated in terms of timeless reason can retain their motivational content for someone who regards the present as just another time among others. Each argument, according to him, is based on a distinction between two perspectives on the world and oneself, on personal and impersonal standpoint in relation to solipsism and its denial. According to Nagel, the personal viewpoint is frequently expressed using the grammatical first person. The impersonal viewpoint, on the other hand, provides a view of the world without revealing one's position within it. First and third person claims. Third person claims have behavioral implication. First person claims, on the other hand, express the subject psychological conditions. Nagel emphasizes that the point that one can only say to others what he has said to himself. Thus, solipsism concept applied to one's own experiences do not apply in the same way to anything other than one's own experience. As a result, in solipsism accept the theory that I am the sole existent. As a solipsist, I must hold that I alone exist independently and that what I am is what I am. However, Nagel does not accept the solipsist condition. He believes that if one begins with the idea of oneself and one's own experiences as a model, one may not have enough reason to interfere from what is known to a significant notion of other selves and their experiences. Thus, to avoid solipsism, the conception of other person like oneself must be included in the idea of one's experiences.
On the issue of dissociation, this is a type of solipsism in which claims must be separated from the concept of oneself as merely a person among others. This is because dissociation does not allow for personal practical judgments that could be applicable to all people. This means that one's own reason for acting carries a universal principle with it. So in order to avoid dissociation, one must accept universal practical principle that apply to everyone. Nigel, on the other hand, is not convinced by the universality of ethical judgment. In ethical judgments, he is quick to reinforce his notion of motivational content, first-person practical judgments, and motivation. First-person practical judgments are I have reason to something or the judgment that one has a reason to do. Something include acceptance of a justification for doing it, which refers to a motivational content. In other words, motivational content is first-person practical judgment refers to accepting a justification for doing or wanting something. Moral judgment plays no role in the justification of motives because motives cannot be justified. Practical judgment, reason to do something, are not really practical in this context but because motives are not associated. Motivational con- content can be found in first-person practical judgments. In this case, first-person judgments about reason are inherently relevant to decisions about what to do, which serves as the basis for action justification. As a result, acknowledging such as such a reason in the first person has significant motivational content. To summarize, solipsism does not qualify one to perform an altruistic act. A solipsist is confined to his own word, namely the word of experience, whether affection or cognition. Okay. On Nigel theory of altruism. Nigel is an accomplished moral philosopher. He thinks deeply about altruism in his moral teaching. There are few objections to his concept of prudence reason, timeless, objectives, theoretical and practical, motivational context and self, personal, impersonal, tenseless, which lead him to a discussion of solipsismo and dissociation. Nagel's concept of altruism is a definitive cure for a disease known as selfishness. Solipsism or any theory that firmly embraces the self or the ego as the only interest, preoccupation, and concern of its beholders. L. Ralph Barton Peirce's concept of value, morality, and moral concept. Meaning of value. Values, according to Perry, are primarily subjective. Nonetheless, he remarks that one must be eroded to include that the giving of a certain meaning of value is a arbitrary matter dictated by caprice or by the proponent of said meanings, personal convenience. Perry is correct in his assessment that even the value is subjective. Its author must also consider the objective validity of what he value. This is due to the fact that morality is objective. Morality does not exist at the whims and caprice of a person's perception of it. Is the person's actions that must be moral. Defines value in the classical sense as those that refer to the object of human desire, striving, or interest. Value is defined by him in terms of interest. Morality is independent of whatever interest an agent has. It is not morality that must conform to the interest of moral agent. Rather, it is other way around. Meaning of morality as must attempt to balance conflicting interests. Morality is the resolution of a problem caused by a conflict between the interests of two or more people. So, ambitious of universal interest are benefits, and benefits traditionally been defined as the rightness or wrongness of human behaviors. Morality necessitates a more personal involvement of the moral agent than a more interest. Morality may imply the sacrifice of denial denial of one's own interest if doing so is detrimental to the moral agent. Interest has many different shades, textures, and nuances, so it could provide a variety of options. It is accepted in the domain of morality. It will be a devastating blow, especially if interpreted solely from the context of the subject. 1. Interpretation of moral concept. 1. In a general sense, and 2. In a specific sense. Good is defined as the character that anything derives from being the object of any positive interest, whatever is desired, like enjoyed, wild or hope for. Is this good? Morally good is the character imported to object by harmonious organized interest. This means that the good and value are interchangeable, or that whatever is considered value is good and whatever is considered good is value. Rape, stealing, cheating, and the like are all good only on the part of the perpetrator being so vicious, etc. in carrying out this act. These are examples of the aforementioned apparent goodness. Perry now claims that an object is morally good in the specific sense when the interests that make it good meets the requirements of harmony. Mr. Tom Bishop's views of justification of morality itself. It morality something that man invented or something that authority imposed on him. It is if it was invented by man, it is the result of a more convention. It is merely conventional, and this means that morality is imprisoned or given life in the culture or tradition of a society, so that the moral lives of its members vary from society to society or culture to culture. In other words, the issue of good and evil in the context of human behaviors or human conduct is correlative with human existence. Bishop's contention of moral justification. Despite all of the immoralities that make human life a shambles, man remain firm in his conviction to seek the foundation of the necessity of auto the moral or good. Morality has its own justification. According to Bishop, it is always possible that ensure other sense of a better life, so people will have some shots of this better life if they do not live up moral requirements from a social, spiritual, religious, or political standpoint. There may be a better life. According to Bishop, the demand to live a moral life may conflict with our own self-interest or with our other commitment. 1. From the standpoint of a group of people or as a whole society that adopts a moral way of life. Uh, and 2. From the standpoint of an individual person, why he should adapt and give super to a moral way of life. David Gutler's concept of morality and advantage. While it is true that one would benefit from everyone everyone else acting morally, and that one should try to avoid the sanction that would be imposed for my immoral acts. According to Bishop, that this consideratory provide no ailing reason why one should act morally or be moral rather than merely pretending to act morally. Do they explain why one should always act morally in cases of conflict? Gather claims that this understanding for morality bears three characteristics, namely: 1. Conduct based on immediate interest; 2. Pretend conduct; and 3. Conduct based on the best interest of others. This made them realize that legal separatory or annulment of their marriage are eventually the dissolution of their family is only an etc. away. Inch away di ay. This agreement clearly benefits both H1 and W1 visa holders if both accept and implement. To summarize, the immediate goal of H1B and W1 visa holders is to reshape others' families as husband and wife. They act and will that eventually of their personal agreement to renew or transform their lives by forming a personal agreement to truly transform their lives. Gatler assertion that the benefit of the moral system is not one that any individual can secure for himself, because each can benefit from the sacrifices of others, includes that no no one can ever gain if he is moral support, a surprising line of reasoning. The justification the justification of morality may not be drawn from some reason. Internal justification that maintains that the person's motivation for acting morally is guaranteed by the truth of ethical principles, but rather from non-moral reason or rational justification. To support this claim, Bishop employs David Gutter's argument. The latter contends that morality as a set of principles can be realized only if all parties, moral agents, live a moral life.